Hi, thank you for listening in once again to Mad Scientists Exposed. And I've been reading some very interesting articles on nerve regeneration. I know that's quite an interesting topic for a lot of people. I know in my lifetime I've known people with nerve damage from various injuries. Sometimes it's paralysis, sometimes it's blindness. And I thought, well, there's got to be something out there. And of course, mainstream Western medicine doesn't deal too much with it. It's I don't know why. They just kind of throw up their hands. The money's in research more than it's in actually solving things. I know a family friend that I've got. He's only a couple years older than me. He was born in the 50s. And this has got me thinking about this. And he was born legally blind. He can see some color. He can read it. He can read his computer screen if he puts his nose right on the screen. He works for a major company in Tucson, Arizona, and he's he did until recently. He was the liaison for the disabled employees that they had, and he was, organizing their benefits that they had for disabled people. And he's never known any different. He was born this way, and he's colorblind and nearly entirely blind. And what he told me was that this happened. He's one of 8 siblings, and the 3 middle siblings all were born with this birth defect. And the doctors told him, well, there's nothing you can do because the eye is fine. The problem is the optic nerve is malformed, and it was traced back to a medication the doctors gave their mother while she was pregnant with them. So, the first several children were fine. The middle 3 were blinded by this, and once they figured it out, they stopped doing it. And then the last few children were fine. It's just these middle 3 that were born with this horrible thing. And I recently, another friend of mine recently had his cataracts repaired, and that's not a nerve regeneration thing, but it had gotten quite a bit far along, his cataracts, because he just had his own, had to come to his own decision that he couldn't see well enough to function anymore. He gave up his driver's license years ago, and several years ago, and was walking where he needed to go and living close enough to the bus line that he could mostly live his life normally. But things got just progressed too far, and he decided, okay, he was going to go for the cataract surgery. And once that's occurred, they do one eye, they replace the lens that they take out the damaged lens and put in a new artificial lens. But now he can see colors. He's been quite joyful about it, quite a lot. He can see buildings in the distance he couldn't see for years, things that he never knew were there, and now he can see them, and the colors are brighter because not only are you losing the focus ability, which I never really thought about, but you lose a lot of colors when cataracts progress too far because you basically have built-in sunglasses over your eyes, and you have this fog and just lose a lot of color. Anyway, so I just started thinking from him. I started thinking about my other blind friend, and I was just, I wish there could be some treatment out there for nerve regeneration. And, there's not a whole lot in mainstream medicine. His doctors have been telling him for years, the problem's the optic nerve, you'll never see. And so I don't know if he ever will or not, but I started researching articles and reading, and I've had other friends in life. When my son was in first grade, one of his classmates, her father fell off a ladder putting up Christmas lights and broke his neck, and he lingered for a week or so, and then he died. And then I had another friend who was, he was a man actually older than me also, but he had a motorcycle, and he was fixing to sell it. But, of course, the day before he was due to sell it, he had an accident, and he, became a quadriplegic, which was horrified. He was quite a popular musician in the local music scene in Tucson, Arizona, and it just horrified so many people because this guy played a lot of instruments, and all of a sudden he had no use of his hands. And, of course, he was married with teenage daughters, and just devastated the whole family, devastated the whole music community in Tucson. And he went to rehab in Colorado so he could learn how to drive his wheelchair and puff on things and talk through his ventilator. And it was quite sad. And they, the community did a fundraiser about 7 months or so after his injury, and the fundraiser was for retrofitting his house, for his, widening his door frames, installing ramps and ways for him to get around in his house, probably remodeling the kitchens or whatever. Excuse me. Anyway, it was kind of a love fest, with the people, all his music friends, were there playing music, and there were some contra dancing, which is kind of like an old-fashioned type of square dancing, and that was the old-timey scene that he was in. That he played banjo and accordion and guitar. I think he played fiddle and mandolin. And he was just top-notch musician. Anyway, it was it was this big love fest for this man, and they had this fundraiser, and then about a week or so later, he just died in his sleep. I don't know if I'm not sure whether that was a conscious decision on his part, if he was just done, or if God called him. I don't know really what it was, but these things, I've seen enough in my life. Things just life is not perfect, and you see these horrible things happen to people, and you just wish you could do something about it. So I started thinking about these things, and I started researching, and I remembered an article I read a couple of years ago. And I'm sure this was after this incident with this man, but there was another man in Tucson that I remember who recovered. He had a horrible, horrible car accident up in Flagstaff, and which is on the north end of Arizona, but he himself lives in Oro Valley. And the article is that once paralyzed Oro Valley man now teaches Tai Chi, and I've got a link to it on my website if you want to see it. It's quite an interesting article. The article describes his accident, which was in June 1991, and he the same kind of story. They take him to the hospital, they stabilize him, and then they send him to rehab, or actually the rehab, I guess, was coming to his home. And this is a man named Joe Pinella, and he's in Oro Valley. I presume he's still there. This article is from 2014, so it's not that old, about a year and a half, December 2014. And he was extremely frustrated with the rehab, with the people that were coming to his house for the therapy, the rehab, because his goal was to recover and take care of himself. I mean, he couldn't even brush his own teeth and or feed himself or change his clothes, any of that, bathe himself, toilet himself, any of that. He couldn't do it. And his goal was to jump into therapy, get himself, back in the direction of being able to care for himself. And the therapists that were coming to the house, their goal was to get him to accept that he was going to be this way the rest of his life and never move again. And he was having horrible arguments with them. So he finally reached the point of, after I don't know how long he put up with that, but it was like their goal was to suck the hope out of him. And if there's anything more crippling to anybody, it's sucking the hope out of them. And without hope, people commit suicide. It's just a horrible thing to rob somebody of hope. Anyway, he fired them. He fired those therapists, and he started thinking about his own situation and trying to solve it. And I guess many years before, he had learned Qigong and Tai Chi, and so he called his Tai Chi master from years before, and he said, "What do I do? How can I, what can I do? Can you suggest anything?" And the Tai Chi master suggested that he imagine himself doing the exercises, even though he couldn't do them physically in this reality plane. He could imagine them. And so he was doing 6 hours a day in his bathtub, and I'm not sure what the point of him soaking in his tub, doing this in his tub for several hours, 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, imagining all these exercises. And he didn't want to defeat himself, so he pretty much kept his eyes closed all the time. And after quite a while of doing this, let me see how far down I can find in the article. I'm not sure if it was months or weeks, but he did this quite a while, and eventually he he opened his eyes and he saw that his hands were moving. And that's when he knew for sure. I mean, he always kind of felt that he would be able to do this somehow. He just had this innate spiritual confidence. He recognized there was a higher plane that he was working through because, when he first was in the ER and stuff, he had this out-of-body experience that some people have, where he's looking down on the doctors, and he could tell them later what was said in the operating room. So he knew that he was working with this extra plane, and when he saw that his hands were actually working, it was just that further confirmation that he could do this. And it took 7 more years before he could walk perfectly without any limps or crutches or anything. And he says the only thing left is he has 2 fingers that he can't move anymore. But he's so confident in this now. He's actually teaching Tai Chi and Qigong, and I've got a link to this article. Just a wonderful article. He's standing in the front of the class, reaching out and, teaching the class. And so there are things that we don't understand about the human body. And for these therapists to be telling them, you will never do it, you will never do it, I mean, they're crossing the line into a spiritual realm, robbing somebody of hope. And, that affects the physical plane. If somebody really believes they'll never do it, they won't. And so he just refused to believe it. And so I want to give people hope out there, and I want to find solutions for my friend that's still blind and things that, and he's somebody that's never experienced sight. But in one of these articles that I came across, I've got more articles here. Let's see, which one is it? 6 bodily tissues that can be regenerated through nutrition. And this is greenmedinfo.com. And they have a lot of good science articles and nutrition articles. And there's a mention in here, they have nerve regeneration as the first section. And they talk about auditory nerves being regenerated for people that have never heard before. So if it can be done for the ears, why can't it be done for the eyes? And so, I just hope that my friend, listens in and he can read my articles or somebody can read them to him. Anyway, so I've got several articles here. If somebody wants to call in and join the conversation, the number here is the call-in number is 347-324-3704. 347-324-3704. And if you want to join the conversation, please hit the 1, and I'll get a little pop-up here. So let me take a momentary break here, and I'll be right back.
Did you know most Americans know nothing or very little about the legal system? I am the Rose Colombo, longtime legal activist, legal coach, legal advocate, and the author of Fight Back Legal Abuse, Irwin Award winner, and also my latest political satire, Obamacare, Dinosaurs, Rednecks, and Radicals, a political satire exposing the evil agendas of Obamacare and redistribution of wealth that leaves you with a thought-provoking ending. Will mankind survive, or will the U.S. natural-born citizens become extinct? It's available at Amazon.com. You can also visit my website at www.fightbacklegalabuse.com for more information. So order your copy today and empower yourself with the knowledge before injustices come knocking on your back door unexpectedly.
Vaccines are required for students, employees, immigrants, military members, and international travel. Do you know how to legally avoid them? This is vaccine rights attorney and Freedomizer radio host Alan Phillips. My vaccine exemption ebook can help you avoid the mistakes that have cost others their exemption rights. Get the authoritative guide to vaccine legal exemptions, an ebook available at freedomizerradio.com and vaccinerights.com.
Let freedom ring throughout the land.
Can you give me your name when you come on?
My name is Dr. Eric Norman. I have studied vitamin B12 deficiency for over 35 years. I have developed the urinary MMA test to detect tissue B12 deficiency early, allowing treatment and prevention of permanent disability. B12 deficiency can cause anemia, but also neurologic problems such as spinal cord degeneration, paranoia, and dementia. B12 is found only in animal sources, so vegetarians become deficient. As people age, they may not produce enough stomach acid or intrinsic factor protein for absorption of B12 and become deficient. Up to 10% of seniors may have a normal serum B12 level, but a tissue B12 deficiency causing a 3 times greater risk for heart attack, stroke, or Alzheimer's. For more information, visit b12.com.
Hi, so we're back, and let me take this call here. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hello?
It's Ed.
Hi. Is this Ed?
Hello. Yes.
You have just a wealth of experience. It's wonderful that you, yeah. Hi.
Well, you know, I worked for a while at Stanford University back in the mid-'90s. I was just doing some audio work, audio and tape work and stuff like that. At the same time, a friend of mine got me a part-time job also for a guy named Vito, and I forgot his last name. I worked there off and on for about a year, and he had an actual shop on El Camino Real in Palo Alto where he sold stuff for people that were suffering from macular degeneration, you know, which is a terrible eye illness. He was a lifelong, he had been blind for his entire life, but he had somehow gotten through Harvard University, so he was a sharp cookie. He was very good, and he was an inventor, and he had invented some products.
Sometimes it strikes people in old age.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know, but it does. It does strike people in old age. But I remember when people came into the shop, you know, with their friends. Usually they came in pairs. Somebody would come in helping the person because they were having a hard time seeing. They were all different ages. So most of them, I would say, were middle-aged, actually. So it's a terrible disease. But I never thought when I was working for old Vito that, you know, 15 or 20 years later that I would have an eye problem that almost made me blind. And actually, in this, I came down with cataracts in about 2012. I lost my driver's license in 2013 when I couldn't read the eye charts, you know, when I went into the DMV. Yeah. And then I kind of like, you know, I was semi-retired anyway. I do things with used and rare books, and I write and stuff. And so I kind of lead a very hermit kind of life in my little room, you know. But my life became more and more narrow, more and more confined. It finally got so, you know, I'd go out, and it was like I was in a London fog, you know. It's hard to describe. It's almost like if you've ever been like in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco and the fog is rolling in, you know, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And I just could not see sharp edges to things anymore. And, you know, this kind of just made me stay home even more. And I wasn't getting the best of advice. I wasn't, you know, I was kind of afraid. I was really afraid of the procedure of removing the cataracts. For a long time, I thought I could take some kind of herbs or something. There must be an herb, or there must be a tonic. There must be some drops that I can put in my eye. No, nothing like that ever turned up.
Well,
somebody did invent something.
I've seen some literature that moringa oil drops can help dogs, but, you know, it's not approved for human use. Of course, nothing is approved for human use in the U.S. It's horrible. I just Googled up macular degeneration, and the first thing that Google tells you about macular degeneration is can't be cured, but treatment may help.
Isn't
the treatments are magnified screens.
Of course, there's miracles, too. There's miracles, you know. For me, macular, I was very lucky that it was cataracts because finally what happened is a friend let me out of the car, and I was kind of in a very happy mood, and I ran across a crosswalk across 6-lane wide Speedway Boulevard here in Tucson. And as I was coming off the center, island, still running, the light turned orange, turned yellow. So I put on the afterburners to run even faster. I could see the light. I could see the light, but I couldn't really see the light. But anyway, so I put on the afterburners, and I suddenly slipped. I suddenly slipped on some loose gravel, and I fell right on my face, and I didn't even have time to put my arms out in front of me. So, I almost broke my nose. I got gashes in part of my nose, part of my cheek, part of my forehead, and I really messed myself up, my knees and everything. So nothing was broken. Well, actually, I had a hairline fracture in my left arm. Anyway, so it took me a couple weeks to recover, and then I thought, you know what, I'd better get these eyes taken care of, And that's when I went in and went to the ophthalmologist, and, within a couple weeks, they had set the whole thing up. And I'll tell you, I was scared of two things. I was scared of the surgery, and I was scared of the anesthesia, because they said, well, it's not really general anesthesia. It's kind of like sedative, light sedative. Well, I didn't believe it. But anyway, I didn't have to worry about the surgery, because I was totally under the sedation, and I was awake the whole time, except I'll tell you, 15 minutes of surgery went by in what seemed to be like 90 seconds or 2 minutes. It was absolutely streamlined. It was so fast. I don't know what they put in there, but it so knocked me out. I mean, no, it didn't knock me out. It just relaxed me. And they had an IV, and also they had me breathing oxygen, and everything. And it just, the next thing I knew, I was seeing, like blues and yellow, blues and pinks and stuff, and, kind of a dreamy kind of feeling. And the next thing, the nurse was saying, well, you're finished. Come on, you can sit up. Would you like a glass of orange juice or a glass of cranberry juice, And next thing I was out of there.
Wow.
And now, let me tell you, I didn't realize I was legally blind. I was legally blind as of the time that I went to the ophthalmologist, before my surgery.
Well,
now I think
legally
I have.
blind means when you lose your driver's license.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that was 2 years before. That was almost 3 years before that I had my driver's license revoked. So it only got worse, you see. So anyway, now I have close to 20/20 vision. Just a couple weeks later. As a matter of fact, the first eye they did 3 weeks ago, and the second eye they did 2 weeks ago. No, not even 2 weeks ago. And now my eyes are getting actually clearer and clearer. With one eye, I very, very tiny print when I'm reading, and with the other eye, I can see long distance, just incredibly.
Wow.
There's friends up here in Sun Lakes, and they have a big, beautiful living room that looks out at a distant golf course. Well, 3 weeks ago when I was looking on that golf course, sitting in a chair looking at the golf course, all I could see was a rectangle of green. That's all, just a faded kind of rectangle of green. And then say, oh, you see the golf out there? You see the golf cart? No. Well, actually, the other day, I was sitting in the same chair, and I said, oh, my gosh, look at that. There's two golfers out there. One of them has a white cap, a white shirt, black pants. He's teeing off. He's swinging his club. I could even see the golf ball being driven down the fairway. It was just absolutely like the difference between night and day. And I am overjoyed now. I'm absolutely overjoyed that I have my vision back. That was just something that I was growing to accept that I was going to be.
The only thing that held you back was fear and despair. Those are probably the two most destructive emotions.
Yes, and also my life was getting tighter and tighter. I was staying in my room more and more. I can't say that I was getting depressed. It's not really depression, but, I just couldn't do very much. I just couldn't do it. It got so that I couldn't even – when I started not being able to read emails or text messages very clearly, then I knew that the jig was up. Then I knew that I had to do something about it, I could still see the big screen TV.
I'm really sorry it took a fall on your face.
It took a fall. It took a fall for me to do that, and I'm just so glad that technology is so advanced with Western medicine as far as things like the eye operation, that they made this thing seem like child's play. Suzanne, they made it seem like child's play.
Wow.
The nurses were friendly.
There's some things that are very straightforward like that. But things like macular degeneration and our friend's optic nerve problem, they're still telling these people, no, there's no hope, you can't be cured.
I don't know
how can they
get at the optic nerve? The optic nerve is something that I don't think that even modern medicine, Western medicine, at its best, doesn't know how to replace that, unless maybe that. Could they do it through some kind of stem cells? What do you think?
Well, that's a possibility. Let me pull up. I think I had another article here about optic nerve regeneration.
That would be awesome. I just feel so sorry for people that are blind right now. I feel so sorry about it. And If there's anybody out there that has cataracts and they've been putting off getting them treated, there is no reason for them to put it off. Their life will be like 300% better after they have the surgery. And the surgery is so simple, you know.
Wow.
You're looking for that
yeah,
article,
there is some
huh?
research at the National Institute of Health, National Eye Institute, report on the National Eye Institute Audacious Goals Initiative, Regenerating the Optic Nerve. And there's a big, long paper here. Steps to optic nerve regeneration, and it, RGC survival. Let's see. I'm not sure what it was. And then there's axon growth, and it's synapse formation and circuit integration. Anyway, gaps in scientific knowledge and barriers to progress, mechanisms underlying regeneration. Well, they want to understand every little inch of the way. And I think that there's, from what I read about the auditory nerve regeneration, there are nutritional things that can do it. And let me place this article on the site too. And there's some articles I haven't quite gotten to yet. I'll put the link, but I'll have to put the link later.
Well, I saw something in online that tinnitus can be cured with a very simple exercise, but I didn't follow the link to see what it was. Every once in a while I have to
really? Huh. I had heard that was a nutritional thing, tinnitus.
I wasn't really a guy that listened to too much heavy rock music when I was in my 20s or anything. So I don't think I really got a bad case of tinnitus, or I want to call it tinnitus, but I guess it's tinnitus. But I know a lot of people really suffer from that, and people are getting at a very young age that are listening to these very loud rock, and also in games. They're playing games with lots of explosions and stuff like that,
Yeah, here's a site, healthyhearing.com. Tinnitus, you hear what you eat.
You hear what you eat? Come again?
Yeah, so this is about nutrition and tinnitus. Overcoming tinnitus with nutrition. And I had read about, and I know there's other articles out there because I've heard of it before. I don't suffer from it myself. I didn't remember. I didn't retain what nutrition it was. I just Google things as I need them usually.
You know what it sounds like? It feels like it could be blood blood rushing through the head or through the ears. Like, let's say somebody had elevated blood pressure, high blood pressure, then they might be hearing the tinnitus a little bit. But it seems like that's all it is. It seems like it could be blood rushing through the inner ear or something, but maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about it to really comment.
Which is, I believe that's actually Lance Armstrong's nutritional health website. Nutritional deficiency and ringing in the ears, tinnitus and vitamin deficiencies. Lack of vitamin A may be overlooked root cause of tinnitus and hearing loss.
Oh, wow.
Wow, vitamin A. So what is that? That's carrots, right? So carrots for your ears and your eyes?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
My mother loved carrot juice. She used to make her own carrot juice until she one day ended up in the hospital, and they called it carotene poisoning. She had actually, as she got feeling sicker and sicker, she drank more carrot juice, and she finally ended up in the hospital from it. And then I think she spent like 2 weeks in a rehab or something like that after that. So that's one of the
I've never heard of
few
poisoning.
cases.
Wow.
Well, she loved her carrot juice, and she had one of these aluminum scraper. Do you know? It's kind of like I don't know how to describe it. You put a carrot up against it and you scrape it. You just kind of go up, down, up, down, up, down, and the carrots turn into pulp. And then she squeezes the pulp and it turns into juice. Well, she would have a couple big glasses of carrot juice every day, and she gave me some too. But
Wow, how long did it take her to make it? I mean, there are people with juicers that they'll put 5 pounds of carrots through to get a glass of carrot juice out of there.
We had our own garden in back, and when I lived in the orchard with my parents, we had our own garden in back, and we must have had, I don't know, 10 by 20 feet of nothing but carrots, because we were always having so many. And what she didn't have raw, she would put it up in a dinner table, like a roast with potatoes and carrots. There'd always be carrots around there.
Did you have carrots every night for dinner?
Well, but often. Well,
Wow.
Sundays, we'll have a chicken or something. We had about 100 chickens, and then the cost of feed went up, and my dad had thought he could sell the eggs, but he couldn't really find a good market for the eggs. People would say, well, why should I buy from you? I can buy them from the store, So at a certain point, I was a little boy at the time. And at one point he said, oh, it's terrible. The dog killed one of the chickens, Oh, dear, the dog killed one of the chickens. We said, well, if you don't mind, let's have it for Sunday dinner, So anyway, that's what we had. We sat around, and the next week, oh, dear, that dog got the chicken again. We're going to have chicken for dinner again.
Well, you were a little kid.
And finally, and they were weeding out the herd,
That's
the
That's
chickens.
kind of sad, actually.
I know
another friend of mine. Another friend of mine, his mother kept 70-something chickens, and one day his father just got fed up and told her to get rid of all the chickens. And, so the kids came home from school one day, and the freezer was packed with like 70 chicken carcasses, and he will not eat chicken with bones in it ever again.
Dear.
He was traumatized.
Dear.
And his sister was traumatized, too. Other family members weren't as traumatized, but a couple of them were. But I'm looking at images of carotene poisoning here, and it looks like the major symptom is your skin turns orange. And
yes, that's
one of my
exactly what happened to her. Exactly.
Really. One of my maybe that's what Donald Trump does. I was assuming Donald Trump was doing a tanning bed, but maybe he's drinking buckets of carrot juice. I don't know.
And also pouring it over. And also pouring it over his head to get him that orangey gold color on his hair.
I think
maybe that's not
completely
natural.
Hair dye, I think, But yeah, he looks a little better when he lets it go a little gray. A little gold, a little gray. It looks a little better to me. But,
distinguished. A little distinguished.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm looking now. There's a large list of vegetables here on Wikipedia that can cause keratinosis. That's what it's called.
Oh wow. Okay.
But, I wonder if there's any benefit to that.
Orange?
Skin harmful?
Are they all in that same color? Are they different color vegetables?
Yeah, these people are these.
That have carotene?
No, they're not. There's like parsley and things. Parsley, peaches, pineapples.
Oh,
now, my sister's baby loved baby food squash. He was eating the yellow squash or the pumpkin or something like that, and he loved it so much he turned orange, yellow, like orange, and so she just stopped feeding it to him, and he got over it. So
did you say baby food squash? Baby food squash?
Yeah, little jarred baby food. I mean, he's grown like now. He's an adult. I mean, he's well over it. But yeah, how you get jars of baby food. I don't know if have you ever seen them? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I've seen baby food.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I don't know. I should read up more on.
So you're saying that there are veggies that are good for hearing loss. Do you think carotene might be good for? That has vitamin A, and vitamin A is good for hearing loss. That's where we came in, right?
That's. Was it vitamin? Yeah, no, I think it was the optic nerve regeneration article. Let me see.
Okay.
Where did I get this?
Yeah.
No. Oh. Now I have to skip through my articles again. Or maybe it was. That's right. It was the ear nerve health.
Oh yeah.
Was the vitamin A?
You know who I was?
I don't. I just assumed vitamin A and carotene.
Do you know who I was talking on the phone just 15 minutes with? Was a woman by the name of Kathleen, and she's she was an acupuncturist, and she has a degree in Chinese medicine and Chinese herbs and whatnot, and she's taught at one of the colleges in this area, a course on nutrition and no, I'm sorry, not nutrition, but on Chinese medicine. I just wonder if she knows. If maybe we should ask her sometime if there's remedies in Chinese or Indian medicine or with their cuisine, their herbs that they have and everything for things like hearing problems and vision problems. Maybe they have some kind of exercises. There are all kinds of yogas and different things like that. I think,
if they're outside of the Western medicine hopeless paradigm, one of the articles I have linked from my website is actually an article in. That's not an article. It's a news story from KGUN 9 in Tucson, which is actually one of their local stations. It's their ABC affiliate, and it's only a couple months old. This guy went to India. He had an accident, and he was paralyzed from the chest down. Let me find the date on it. and of course, Western medicine has nothing for him. So this was, let's see.
Wow.
This
Brutal.
is just May. This is just last month. So he went to India for some kind of stem cell treatment, and they're very careful not to tell you anymore if it's embryonic stem cell or adult stem cell, because if it's your own adult stem cell, that's totally harmless. I have ethical issues with embryonic stem cell, with using,
what do you mean? What do you mean that they're very
one
careful?
human life.
Suzanne, what do you mean
What?
you're very? They're very careful not to tell you the source of the stem cell. You mean in these articles?
Well, I'm a little cynical on mainstream news, because there's a huge ethical difference between embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells. Adult stem cells you can take from yourself and treat something that's wrong with you. However, and you're not going to have any rejection issues. But embryonic stem cells, there's a lot of corporations with a lot of money sunk into embryonic stem cell research.
But
and I think
wait. Yeah.
What?
Let me just ask. If a person can cure something that's wrong with them with their adult stem cells from their own body, why would they ever use embryonic stem cells? Why don't they just use their own personal stem cells?
That's what I was getting to, yeah, because there's corporations out there with a lot of money vested in embryonic stem cell research, because 20 years ago they didn't think they could cause an adult cell to revert to the stem cell form that once you're an adult, your cells are all individualized for whatever organ that they're in. They didn't know that they could get them to revert, but they now know they can get them to revert, and so they can research these diseases without ethical issues of taking from another human life to benefit yourself. Because they basically they have to kill the the embryo to get the stem cells for the embryo. So that anyway, there was a lot of arguments back and forth. There's the whole thing about Planned Parenthood selling aborted baby parts. And so, they didn't want to get into that issue. So I'm cynical enough to say they didn't want to get into that issue. This man went to India for stem cell treatment. Stem cell, I don't know what kind of stem cell treatment, but a Tucson man. And within a week, he was already moving his toes and then moving his leg right after that. And so he's
that's awesome.
still taking the treatment. He might take more treatment. I don't know. I hope there's follow-up articles, because this was only last month in May. And they've got video of him moving his leg, and he and his fiance went to India to get this treatment that apparently is not available in the U.S. And they already had him, moving his legs. So it's just a wonderful thing. So he was totally paralyzed a year ago.
What's the
on his
prognosis
motorcycle.
he's going to be? Is the prognosis that he's going to be completely cured?
Well, it depends if you ask an American doctor or an Indian doctor. It depends if you ask an American doctor or an Indian doctor as to what his prognosis is. The American doctors certainly had nothing for him, so he had to fly to another continent, to get the treatment. We're supposed to be, America likes to pride itself on being at the lead on everything, and we're just not, because, I'm cynical enough to think, there's a huge industry built up around different types of wheelchairs, and now there's all these charities and fundraisers for these track chairs for returning vets, and they're wheelchairs, but they have treads on them like a tractor, so you can actually hop small staircases and not need a ramp. And I had thought of that, decades ago when I was in college. I thought, because when you're in college, it's a big crowd, and there's some people that get around on wheelchairs, and it's just horrible. They have to go way out of their way to find the ramps to get themselves into the buildings for classes or whatever. And like, why don't their chairs hop the stairs? Why don't they? And now they're finally out with them, with these tracks on them for the veterans. Well, of course, a lot of the veterans, they're coming back with missing limbs and stuff, people needing these chairs, but some of them are paralysis cases. And
isn't it mandated now by the government? Isn't it mandated now by the government that they have to have the ramps, or they have to have entrances and aisles and everything that are suitable for people that are in wheelchairs, that are handicapped?
Yeah, we retrofitted all of society to have ramps and things for every public place. And it's like that was part of my reasoning back in the day. It's like it would be awfully easier to just make wheelchairs that hop steps than it would be to retrofit every building. But of course, then you've got door frames and stuff. But if you're having to retrofit door frames anyway, it's there's a lot of issues, a lot of politics, a lot of things I don't understand because I'm not in that situation. I see it, I observe it. I've had friends succumb to these kinds of injuries, and it's like, okay, if we can build it, and I think a couple of episodes ago on this show, I was discussing there was a man who they put a brain implant in his brain, and it had a receiver in his hand or on his arm or whatever, in his wrist, and it made it so he could send a signal from that, transmit it to his hand, and make his hand work. And he had this like robot skeleton kind of thing on his arm, holding his arm up. And he can move his mouse now with his hand and maybe hold a cup to his lips. But that's not really what he wanted. He wanted his own body healed. And people are, they're getting all kinds of grant money and things, to invent these kinds of robot devices. And that's not really what people want. They want their own body healed.
Yeah. Suzanne, would this technology, evolving, these evolving methods, including the stem cells, would these have helped someone like Hawking, like Stephen Hawking, or with that person in the Tucson community who had the spinal damage? How about the fellow who had the spinal damage after the motorcycle accident? Could that have conceivably helped him, or was that a little bit beyond what this thing could ever do? Regenerating part of the spinal cord.
I don't know.
Could that be done?
Regenerating part of his spinal cord, that's what he needed. But
yes.
I suppose, I don't know, if they had put this implant in his head, he might, I think he's gone 5 or 6 years now. But, putting the implant in his head and the robot arm on his arm to, so he could control it with his mind and all that.
Wow.
I don't think that was around in the time, although maybe they were developing it. These grants come and science just comes out so slowly now from, it seems like, there's just all the money's in research, not in actually getting there, unless I guess they can come up with a product to sell. So that's my cynical edge, that they're intentionally diverting all these scientists and engineers into robotics rather than, an exoskeletons, and they're having people stand up with these leg braces and all this, and like what they really want is their own body healed. So, so that was, so I was mentioning that guy in the Arizona Daily Star. That was another, both of these guys are from Tucson. It's just, that's where I was living at the time, where I remember back to some of these articles. But the guy with the Tai Chi, who was a quadriplegic, and he just visualized himself. And so he was visualizing his nerves healing themselves. And somehow he was reaching up into the spiritual dimension, back down into his own body somehow. And it's a fascinating article, so I have it there. But the guy that went to India is a little bit faster progress because he's got the stem cells now, and I don't know what kind of stem cells they are. So anybody, that would seek this kind of help, that might be a question they want to ask: what kind of stem cells and where do they come from? But this guy was moving within a month of getting there, a month or two of getting to India, whereas this other guy took a full 7 years to get all the way recovered. So you can do it yourself even without these people outside. But then there's other articles out there, nutritional things, and there's one article I found that's very adamant about this. They don't call it a nutritional thing. Let me find it. I've got too many tabs open now. When I start clicking on these articles, I'm just fascinated to read them.
While you're doing that, I was just thinking of Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
I was thinking, this guy is a great scientist. Wait. He's a great scientist, right? Wouldn't you suppose that a scientist has tremendous powers of concentration, like when he's trying to solve a problem?
Yeah.
Okay, then couldn't he translate that kind of ability into what this other guy was doing here, meditating, concentrating, on regenerating himself?
Well,
wouldn't it be great if every time we saw Stephen Hawking?
Stephen Hawking has a different issue. It's not a broken spinal cord. He's got an autoimmune disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. When people were doing the ice buckets over their heads a couple of years ago, that was for this disease, ALS awareness.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah,
You said they were doing ice buckets on their heads. What could you explain?
it was a fundraiser thing. A couple of years ago, there was this ALS awareness movement, and you would get people to sponsor you, like running. How many kilometers? How many dollars will you give me for how many kilometers I run, and things like that. And they're like, how many dollars will you give me for dumping a bucket of ice water over my head? And I don't know why they chose that. I really don't know. But movie stars were putting up videos of themselves dumping ice buckets over their head, and that was inspiration. And then all the Girl Scouts and all the different organizations around the country, they people were putting up videos of ice buckets for donations.
Where was this contest held? Was it held in Phoenix? Was it held in Phoenix?
All over the country. It was all over the country. Might have been around the world even.
It's just that we're having a heat spell right now. It was 118 a few days ago. Now it's like 112, 111. We're going to have 6 or 7 days in a row. It's going to be over 110. And I was thinking, hey, an ice bucket on the head, this would be the perfect place to do it, in the middle of one of these hot spells. Of course, the monsoon is rolling in a week or two.
I'm too chicken. Temperature extremes going from 112 to what, 32 degrees over my head. I don't think I could do it. But there's
30 or 40.
Wow, here's a
degrees.
quote on this article, cancertutor.com. Bitterness is like cancer. Oh, it went away. Insanity doing the same thing over and over. Let me see if it comes back. This one, nerve damage natural treatments, spinal cord injuries. It's at cancertutor.com. And it's talking about TUCOR, yeah. Yeah, as bitterness is like cancer, it eats up on the host, but anger is like fire, it burns. Oh, it just scrolls too fast. I have to wait for it to come around again. But inspirational quotes, and what we were talking about, hope and despair and fear versus hope and determination. Those things can make all the difference, and you can find a solution for yourself. It burns it all clean. Okay, so so bitterness just will weigh you down, but if you're determined, you can solve things. And I know Christopher Reeve was really determined, and his way of doing it was to fund research. Yeah. So they didn't find anything before he died, because he was funding the research, not the cure. And I've heard some speculation that on some of these future disease funding things, like I would love to see it, get all the lobbyists out of Congress and the pharmaceuticals, and instead of funding research, having rewards for finding the answer. So, the reward, if you actually funded solutions rather than endless research, we might actually solve some things.
You mean like if somebody comes up with an actual cure for cancer, then they get $10 million or something like that, $20 million, but not just to keep funding the research year after year after year, and you don't know what they're really doing. They might be inventing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, they get their grant funds, and then they just research endlessly. Like this one thing about the nerve regeneration research, they were going to understand the whole process down to the molecule before they could attempt to even solve it. It's like, no. Yeah. There's already people out there that have done things that are worth looking into. Now, there's one article here on cancertutor.com. They talk about this plant substance called DMSO, which is dimethyl sulfoxide. And I guess they're using it in some other countries. But it was actually curing a few people with quadriplegia in the U.S. And, as your nerves regenerating. Yeah, it was doing that, and it was curing some other diseases. It's kind of an interesting article.
Did you say quadriplegia? I've heard of people who are quadriplegic, but there is an actual disease called quadriplegia?
No,
or
that's
a condition, or is that a disease?
Somebody's paralyzed. They can't use either their arms or their legs. That's the name of the condition, where you can't use either your arms or your legs.
And they're curing that?
That's
wow.
Well, it's a strange article because they don't. Well, they do have a couple of links to outside, but they don't give. It's hard to find the references that they're. So I have to Google some more on that. I absolutely have to Google some more on that. But they're stating that it has worked, and they cite a couple other herbs and stuff too essential oil and an omega-3 fatty acid, and there's so much we don't know about the human body. And you do have to
gave me an inspirational. You gave me an inspirational figure in my mind, and that is Stephen Hawking. And the guy is so, would be so fabulous is if every time we saw him, he was getting better. Let's say if he was slowly treating that Lou Gehrig's disease. Let's say if he was able to use that therapy, what do you call it that we were talking about? The stem cell research. What if there was stem cell research that they could do on Lou Gehrig's disease, and he was slowly getting better? He was shaking it off. Wouldn't that be fabulous?
It would be, but what I'm saying is that there's different causes of different things. Some people, like my friend with his motorcycle in Tucson, broke his neck, and that was it. It just when the nerves, when the spine healed, or quote unquote healed, it was all encased in scar tissue, and then trying to coax the nerves out of the scar tissue in order to reconnect the way they're supposed to. That's where Western medicine just throws up their hands and say, "Oh no, we can't do it." Like, that's crazy. How can they, not do it? Whereas Lou Gehrig has a progressive autoimmune disease, ALS, where his own body is attacking his own nervous system. That's a different thing. And that, I did some reading on him. Now, he's been sick for so long. Nobody expected him to live as long as he has. And he's a world genius. He's a world treasure. But the older he gets, the more bitter he gets, because he's just sick of being sick.
Oh, yeah. He's cranky.
So he's totally turned from God. He's blaming God, so now he's an atheist. And so now
does he blame God, or he doesn't believe in God? Does he believe in God and he's blaming him, or is he an atheist?
He's rejecting God. And it's warping some of his most recent science. So you'd have to read his book. My daughter reads his books, but she gave up on him because it's warping some of his most recent science. And I don't know if you remember the talk, the book TV talk with Alan Lightman in Tucson a year and a half ago or so, where he was talking about physics, cosmology, which is what Stephen Hawking does, has reached the point where you either have to take a leap of faith that it's an intelligent design, or you have to take a leap of faith that there was no beginning, that everything, it's like just a ricocheting, cyclical universe that keeps regenerating.
There be no beginning?
And either one of those, they can't prove either one. Either one of those is a leap of faith.
Everything that we know of on this planet had an origin of some kind. If you look at, you're holding a rock in your hand, let's say, or a diamond or whatever, it had an origin somewhere, in time and space. And so this whole cosmos must have an origin.
Well, see, now Stephen Hawking is leaning towards the position, the leap of faith, that no, it had no origin, because I think he's just been sick too long, and he's just tired of being sick, and he doesn't want to acknowledge a God that would allow this to happen. His suffering has been horrible his whole life, and really, I did some reading up on him. What his family background, and when I started reading about vaccine damage, I thought, well, what the heck could ALS be vaccine damage? And I can't prove anything. I'm not privy to his medical records, but around the time he got sick, his father was flying to Africa as a parasitologist. He was studying parasites. So what the heck was he bringing home? Was he vaccinating up his family lest he bring something home? I really don't know.
Did he take his children with him at any point when he was traveling to Africa?
Well, I think Stephen Hawking was getting into college at that time. He was getting into college at that time. He got his ALS while he was in college. He managed to finish his degrees and things like that, but either it was exposure to whatever his father was bringing back, or it was the vaccines that possibly, and I'm totally speculating, but if in those days, science the way it was in those days, if I was going to Africa repeatedly studying parasites, I would get myself all vaccinated up against them, and I would get my kids all vaccinated up against them. So
naturally,
that's my speculation. Now, it's total speculation. I don't know what caused his ALS, but I don't think ALS just comes out of the blue. I don't think any autoimmune disease comes out of the blue. I've just been reading too much in the vaccine movement, and how you read the package insert, and so many of them are just line after line after line after line listing all these various autoimmune diseases that you can get from this vaccine and that vaccine, and a certain percent of the population gets them every year. And boy, isn't that just profitable? These permanent diseases for a vaccine against temporary diseases. It's just anyway.
Sure.
So I think it would be a different nutritional therapy for Stephen Hawking than it would, if it can be done, than it would be for somebody with an injury. Just like somebody, set in life is different from somebody that, has a flesh-eating bacteria on it or something. So anyway, I think it's time for me to take another break here. So if you don't mind, I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
You know the Constitution like the back of your hand. You've read books, listened to podcasts, attended lectures, surfed websites, and watched videos. You've made liberty your life's goal, but something seems to be missing. Stickers from LibertyStickers.com. Exercise your freedom of speech with the world's most dangerous bumper stickers. That's LibertyStickers.com. But wait, there's more. You can buy Liberty Stickers wholesale. Get them for 99 cents each when you put 100 or more in your shopping cart in any combination. Sell them or give them away. They're great for gun shows, flea markets, fairs, outreach, and more. Earn extra money, promote freedom, and spread the word. Need custom stickers, labels, or decals for your organization or business? Liberty Stickers makes them. Go to LibertyStickers.com to order or call 877-873-9626. LibertyStickers.com, the world's most dangerous stickers.
How would you like to make your work more enjoyable, be more creative and relaxed, all while sitting at your desk? That's exactly what my Serenity Rug has done for me. This revolutionary footrest, I can't even call it a footrest, because this thing encourages movement of your feet, which results in more blood flow. While traditional footrests advocate the motionless placement of your feet, I found that I'm unconsciously digging my feet into the long, soft grass strands of the Serenity Rug. It delivers an incredibly relaxing sensation that closely resembles the feeling of an exotic foot massage. If you have ever had a foot massage that made you want to stay there for hours, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not heard about the Serenity Rug, check them out at SerenityRug.com and join the exclusive Serenity Rug community and enjoy a feeling of comfort and relaxation that most will never experience. They've sold out before, so I suggest you do your feet a favor and grab one of these. Again, that's SerenityRug.com.
There are a lot of problems with Common Core. I don't even have time to go into most of them, but a step in the right direction would be to give local communities, teachers, parents control over their schools so they can design curriculums and standards to best meet the needs of their students and get the federal government out of education.
U.S. trade negotiators are pushing to complete the TPP this year. They're trying to keep it under the radar. The best way to stop the TPP is to drag it into the light of day. Right now, negotiators have appointed approximately 600 corporate lobbyists to serve as cleared advisors on the TPP, while refusing to release any of their negotiating proposals for public review. The corporate media is unlikely to inform the public about the TPP. We need to do it ourselves.
Hi, so we're back, and we're talking about nerve regeneration, whether through nutrition or some other medicine. Western medicine is kind of slow on the pickup for this, for whether it's people that are hearing impaired or sight impaired. And well, there's the cochlear implant, which I guess would be the equivalent of cataract surgery, but that's not nerve regeneration. If you have something with your well, maybe cochlear implants would be nerve replacement rather, but people want to hear and they want to be healed of their own bodies healed, and if we could have found a nutritional thing fast enough for my friend with the cataracts, and it's wonderful that the surgery has come along to be so quick and easy on people. They've really worked to make it easy, because it is a major thing that a lot of people get in their older years, particularly in Arizona, where the glare of the sun can just do damage to your eyes and your lenses. When you're living on. So you still there, Ed? So.
Oh, that brings up another anecdote of something that happened to me in 2007. I was working for it was a student loan company, and I was living in South Phoenix. What's it called? South Mountain area of Phoenix. Not a great area of Phoenix. And my car had just broken down, and I was starting to take the bus. I was going up to Southern Avenue and taking Southern Avenue about 7 miles over to the city of Tempe, and then I was going north by foot about 6 blocks or whatever. So what was happening is this was a summer job, and I was walking 8 blocks to catch the bus. I'd take the bus 7 miles, and then I would walk another 6 blocks. Well, the day came that I had to do this when it was 115 degrees. There were 3 days in a row, 3 weekdays in a row. It was 115 each day, and I did that for 3 days. I think I took along a little bottle of water at some point, but by the third day, something odd happened. I happened to look at the sky at night, and I saw, this looks like a binary star. So what is this? There's 2 stars. They're kind of like, they're right next to each other. And then I looked at some other stars. I was seeing all the stars were looking double to me suddenly, So I think I might have gotten some kind of weird thing like a brain lesion or something with my vision. And, just from the heat and from
you don't think it was the cataract?
Terrible.
It was the start of the cataract?
No, I don't think that. No, the cataracts were not there at all yet, and I was still able to see distant stars very clearly. There was no fogginess, there was no milkiness to the vision at all. But I think it was just that I really seriously impaired myself by being out and walking, during this really hot weather, because it would be like 100 degrees when I went to work and 115 degrees when I came home from work, because the hottest time of the afternoon was like 4 or 5 o'clock, when I got off, and it was just miserable.
Were you not wearing eye protection or a hat? Did you?
I had a hat.
Glasses?
I had a hat, but there were some things that I hadn't discovered yet. For example, there's this collar, what's it called, a cooler collar or something, that you fill with water, and you can put it in the refrigerator or the ice box or something, and then take it out and wrap it around your neck like a snake, and and that'll keep the carotid artery just slightly cooler, so there's cooler flow to the brain, and that's supposed to be really good, But the problem is that doesn't last forever. That would last for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and after that, then the water heats up, and it's no good, No, I wasn't.
You don't think that was the time that you did initial damage to your eye with the cataract?
Well, no. The cataract forms very slowly over the lens or under the lens, really, and it has nothing to do with damage from heat or anything like that. It was a different issue. Yeah, I've been subjected to a number of weird things in my life. One of them was heat, but then when I was a child, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, I was subjected to DDT poisoning also, and that had some really strange effects on me. I was just, it killed all the bugs and it chased off all the birds, but I was a little kid, and I couldn't avoid it. I was walking to school through the orchard. I would go out and play in the afternoon in the orchard, and it was all poisoned with DDT. It's a wonder I'm still alive.
Yeah,
I'm no big
I just
fan
pulled up
of
an article here, causes of cataracts, and there's various things. Ultraviolet radiation, which you get plenty of here in Arizona, especially in the summer when it's 115 out, the sun coming right down on your head. And I'm so glad we just passed the summer solstice, so the days can start getting shorter. But so UV radiation, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, smoking, that's not you, prolonged use of corticosteroid medications, statin medicines, previous eye injury, inflammation, previous eye surgery, hormone replacement therapy, significant alcohol consumption, high myopia.
Well, I know. I have an idea. I have a theory. In about
you had
2009,
some myopia, right?
No, let me tell you. 2010, 2011, some very good friends invited me over to live for a while in their home, and they had a lovely swimming pool in the backyard, nice big swimming pool, and I love to just float around on there. And I got
just
lots
basking
of
in the Arizona UV sunlight, damaging your eyes.
I think I got UV sunlight right through my eyelids as I was floating on my back. I'm a pretty good swimmer. I have to float and what do you call it when you just stay on top of the water and kick your legs and just float around, and stuff. I do that for half an hour at a time, and I did that day after day. That in the spring and summer and fall.
Wow.
Oh yeah, but I'm telling you, that's probably what might have kicked off the cataracts.
There's all these campaigns about wear your sunscreen, so you don't get skin cancer. Of course, the more sunscreen you wear, the more skin cancer you get. But but there's not these campaigns about protecting your eyes. I'll put a hat on, keep hydrated. About protecting your eyes from the glare, and because the glare in Arizona is just incredible. I moved from Arizona at one point to Maryland, and just the quality of sunlight was different. And I had remembered it from growing up in upstate New York, but if you're in Arizona too long, you stop believing it. It's when I went back to Maryland, it's like in the high summer, just the sunlight and the sky and the air all had a softer light quality. It was just softer, and it was easier on the eyes. And I started comparing photographs from what I was taking in Maryland and photographs that I had brought with me from Arizona, and I was showing people at work. I said, look at the light there. Look how bright and glare it is. You have to shield your eyes just looking at the photograph. That's how bright. It's so.
So the light is different, and the light is different, and also nature is different. I spent some time in Canada, the northern latitudes, and it's amazing how when you have a short growing season, how those trees pump out all that light green, beautiful foliage so quickly, and all of a sudden there's just this beautiful, rich green all over, and spring green, spring green color everywhere, the lawn, the leaves, and everything. And of course, it's gone by September. You only have about 3 or 4 months. But in California, where I lived for a long time, it's not. It's kind of a dusky green. It's kind of a dirty green. It's not the same kind of green at all as you have in the northern states.
And olive green, a Mediterranean green. Yeah, it is.
Call it
amazing.
Mediterranean green.
The things have to grow fast. I know in British Columbia they're really big on the farming and organic farming and stuff like that, and the fruit stands and the vegetable stands, and they would have these giant cabbages and I've seen pictures from Alaska too. Things grow really big, really fast. One short season, and it's one gardening book I read. Arizona, you carve it into 2 short seasons, the equivalent of an Alaskan season, but you have 2 of them every year. From March until early June, and then from late July until November or something. And those are your 2 seasons. So you better get your tomatoes planted in a hurry.
Wow.
Yeah. So. But the quality of the light, that you can't change that. You can just plant your plants and hope to live in the heat and the UV. I've been struggling with the few plants I've got left in my garden, so I've been looking into hydroponics to see about growing indoors because I'm just tired of battling the elements.
Well, let me ask. I remember you said that you were planting your tomatoes and everything. What was the reason that they did not thrive? Was it just the heat spell that got them, the hot spell?
Yeah,
or
there was a heat spell.
It was
most of them died. And there's different breeds. And the one breed I have is supposed to be a little more heat resistant, and so I've got like 1 tomato plant left, and it's these little tiny marble-sized tomatoes. But the other ones, it was just plain heat got them because they didn't even wilt. Just one day, bam, they were brown and dead. So, that's how I live and learn. My gardening skills should improve every year, just like other gardeners. But it's really tough in the Phoenix area. Just things burn up. But
what is this called? Zone 11? Is it Zone 11?
It's 11 or 12 or 13. I don't know.
13. Very unlucky.
I don't know.
Terrible.
Let me see. I'm Googling that up. Plant hardiness zone map. Arizona, let's see. So Arizona has several of it. Chandler, that's not 9A. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. They have Chandler the same as Tucson. That's not quite right. Phoenix 9B.
Oh, no. It's got to be a different zone.
No. It's not 9 anything. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I know it's not 9.
Tucson is more than 1,000 feet higher in elevation than the Phoenix area. Tucson is mostly about 2,500 foot elevation, which is taller than the coast range on the Pacific coast. I mean, just the plateau, the valley or something is quite high. Then when you go northwest from Tucson to Phoenix, it's about 100 miles. and it goes down gradually. You don't even notice that you're going down more than 1,000 feet, down to, what is it, about 1,000 feet in Phoenix and Maricopa County? I think
it's about 1,500 in Phoenix and about 2,500 in Tucson and 3,500 in Sierra Vista. The state kind of slopes uphill.
And that's why it's always hotter
part of the problem.
in Phoenix.
Yeah, part of the problem with the immigrants coming over the border. They're coming from a high elevation where it's not that hot, relatively. On the border, then they get into Arizona and, they get into the lower altitudes, and so it heats up on them. And every year there's so many hundreds that die in the desert because the coyotes take advantage of them and just drop them off. Oh, you only got a few miles to walk to the nearest town, and it's more like 10, 20, 30, 50 miles, and they perish. And so it's
there's so many people that have been found. Their bodies have been found in the desert. I don't know what it was, 500, 600, 700 in a year's time or something. It's horrible.
It's been
and
bad.
It would be an act of mercy. Do you know what? It would be a sheer act of mercy just to build that wall, just to keep that kind of terrible thing from happening. No, it would be the most simple, the most compassionate thing to do to these migrants, to force them not to cross the desert on foot, not to send their children, or these coyotes across.
Through a controlled access point where people aren't going to die. And, this is something that the media just won't cover either. It's somebody's agenda that not only should they come in and not be liable for any crime they commit, and also that they die. It's like somebody is deliberately scrambling the populations of both countries, trying to cause some harm. And I do believe that there's evil forces at play trying to impose the New World Order on people. And the end goal is very nefarious, I think. I hesitate to say, but it's pretty bad. And so, there are forces out there that just feed on human suffering. And so, they hold back medical advancement, and they hold back space travel, and they hold back every advance in science. And it's just, once you see something like the fraud that's going on in the vaccine industry, then you realize how really far off the rails we've gone with science. And, and the worst thing is robbing people of hope, robbing people of their dignity, robbing people of imposing fear on them. It's just now there's this one other thing that I've found online. It's called inclined bed therapy, and I've got that linked on the website too. And I've mentioned it before, and it's hard to. There's not very many sources where you can read about this online because it seems almost too simple to be true. I guess you'd have to have a moderately good nutrition level to allow your body to heal. But this is a guy that promotes putting your bed on a slant. Then if you just raise the head end of your bed like 6 inches. Over time, your body will heal anything that's wrong with you. And
what's the theory?
Different ailments.
What's the theory behind that?
The theory is that your circulation system works better with a slight slant than it does totally flat. So if you're sleeping 8 hours a day, and certainly I know that the valves in your circulation system are designed so that you can pump your blood down and then back up again without it falling back at your feet. That you've got these systems of, I don't know, I don't have a medical term, but valves and muscle squeezes and things like this along your circulation system to keep things moving in a forward direction. Whereas if you're laying totally flat, those systems in your body don't have an exact, they're designed to work with you standing upright and walking or, in an upright position. Whereas if you're flat, you're kind of defeating how they're working. And, I know sometimes I've been eyeing this teeter hang-up thing that, where you hang by your feet and align your back and stuff. And I probably should just find a good chiropractor because sometimes I have this hip pain or back pain or whatever. And it'd be great to just straighten it out and hang by my feet. Well, if I did that, I would only do it for a few minutes at a time anyway. I couldn't sleep like that because, all the blood would rush into your head, and, that's a terrible feeling. at least for me. But
it seems to me,
but if I were to
that
on a slope, it would be comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Suzanne, seems like with that system that you're talking about, the head would be slightly elevated and the feet would be slightly lowered and everything. So the head elevated, there's not as much blood rushing to the head, and maybe that's a good therapy. Maybe it's better to sleep with your head elevated, so it's not, so you don't have all this thick blood coursing through there quite so much. So that's your solution right there.
I would have tried it weeks ago on myself, except that my bed frame is wrong.
But don't get into a situation where the blood is rushing to your head. That would be contraindicated. That would not be good. No good reason to have your blood rushing to your head, and when you're sleeping.
If people sleep with pillows, I think basically to keep the blood from rushing to their head, it's just more comfortable to sleep with a pillow and your head slightly up, and the rest. But generally the rest of your body is flat. That's how Americans sleep. This guy has some research into ancient Egypt and stuff, ancient cultures where a lot of them did sleep on a slight slope like that. And his contention is that when circulation is working with gravity the way it's supposed to work, that you can heal a lot of ailments that don't ordinarily heal if you're sleeping flat. And so he's
I have another experience.
He talks about nerve regeneration. He's got a video of a guy who was a paraplegic, who I don't know how long he was sleeping on a slope like that, but he was able to get himself, and they have a video, he gets himself up out of his chair, and he walks along some parallel bars, or he's moving his own legs. So I don't know how far along he is now. This video is a couple years old. And, but he couldn't do that before he was sleeping on a slope.
20 years ago or so, I had a client, because I do astrology, among other things, I still do astrology. But anyway, this client was very grateful. She said, would you like to spend a week up at Shelter Cove? Shelter Cove is up on the California coastline, just north of, I think it's north of Mendocino County. Maybe it's in Mendocino County. I don't know. But anyway, it's a beautiful isolated location. And in the house, in the bedroom, there was this bed that you could elevate the bed exactly like you're saying. The head, you could get it going, a foot higher than where the feet are, So that was how I lay in this bed, and I was looking out the window
in the middle. Did the bed bend?
You know
or
what?
Did
it actually bent. Yes, it actually bent, and you could kind of it was a $4,000 bed. I'm not kidding. It was a very expensive bed. I'd never seen anything like it. But so anyway, I elevated the head of the bed, and I lay there like that for about an hour. And it was very beautiful because the sky was blue. I had a beautiful view. The moon was maybe 3 or 4 hours from setting. I could see this gibbous moon on the just above the western horizon, and the ocean, and everything. It was just so beautiful. And I felt so relaxed on that bed, just so very relaxed with my head elevated and my feet, down below and everything.
It's obvious
I would
you've
love
never
to
been
recreate that.
It's obvious you've never been hospitalized. You're describing a hospital bed. A hospital bed.
Oh, really?
You can sit it up. Yeah, you can sit it up, but then it bends, and then you have this slight uphill under your knees, and then your feet go down again.
No, this was not.
So you have kind of like a V shape.
This was not sitting up in the bed. This was the whole bed was like on a plane, right? And the plane would go up or down. So you push a button or something, and the whole thing.
So you were not bending at the buttocks there.
No, not bending anywhere. Not bending anywhere. But it was a beautiful experience, and now that I think about it, why didn't I slip off? It's like I was elevated enough. I could have just slipped right off the bed, feet first, but I didn't. I got to recreate that, Suzanne. I got to recreate that, and I'm going to try my best to elevate the bed, just like what you were talking about, and see if it doesn't have some good effects. I'm going to try.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of a bed frame you have. My bed frame won't do it because I've got a headboard on it, and so it won't take the risers that they. You can just get some risers in Ace Hardware or whatever, and raise one end of your bed if you've got the metal feet. But my particular bed, I've got wooden headboard on. I don't have the metal feet.
Well,
I don't know how.
Why wouldn't you? Even with the wooden headboard, why couldn't you slip something in between the two mattresses? There's two mattresses, right? You could slip something in that would elevate the top of the one mattress.
A piece of particle
like
board.
Small,
I don't know,
but
it's an experiment.
I have a lot of books that I have a lot of books that aren't worth very much money. I could put a whole bunch of books under there in a row, and elevate it a little bit. You think would that be worth trying? To kind of experiment?
It brings back a prank when many years ago when I first got married. There was a prank, and people got in the room. My now ex-husband's uncle had the same name, so he just went to the desk and said, "Give me the key to the room." And they gave him the key to the room. You know, my now ex-husband was named after his uncle. They gave him the key, and they piled all these lumpy books all under the bed there, and it was it just was.
Did it work? Did it
not a good night?
Was it like
it was
a
not
joke,
a good night.
It
was some kind of joke.
Night.
Yeah, and they strung strings back and forth across the room too. They were just making the room impossible to use.
Probably because it was stable.
Well, they didn't smoke the bed. They just put these huge lumps in it. It's like, what the hell is wrong? It was like all these dead bodies of rats, but it was books and stuff, and it was just just a prank that some people pulled, and so when you talk about books under the mattress, I just think back to then. So I would, if I were to do this, I would go get probably a piece of particle board and stick it under my mattress and prop up one end with bricks or something. I don't know. But I'd be worried about it sliding off. And so I guess I shouldn't.
Well, I'm going to try it. I think we should. I think, maybe we should plan it out. You're the engineer. Maybe you can engineer this thing out. I know your dad was an engineer. Your brother is an engineer, and you're quite the inventor. You know, you've invented some patentable. How many patents do you have? Didn't you have a couple patents?
I own just the one, and it's expired now, and that was the foot-powered bus.
Yeah, but it made you some money. A little bit. You are really the person to have this show. You know, this show is really good. You have a very good knowledge. And I just wanted to try something out on the phone, okay, with you, and that is, I think at the start of each show, you should have some guy with a voice like me, because my voice is my fortune.
Oh, you want to do a voiceover? Okay, we'll do a voice.
Don't you think that I should try something?
We'll do an intro.
No, but listen.
Okay.
And now, MadScientists.exposed, starring Suzanne.
Yeah, something like that.
And here she is. Wouldn't that work? Wouldn't something like that work?
Probably.
Can we try that sometime?
Yeah, I should probably toot my own horn. I'd like to get the show wider out there, because there's wonderful articles out there. It's almost like any science that you can think of, and that apply to human health. You can find a lot of alternative stuff out there, and you can solve some of your own problems before you ever turn to Western medicine. It's
absolutely.
Like I mentioned about the sunscreen before. It's like I don't ever want to use sunscreen now because of the number one, I don't like splattering stuff on myself. But number two, because now they're saying, maybe sunscreen is actually causing skin cancer. So I stumbled on a video of
it's terrifying.
I think it was the Mike Adams Natural News. He had a video about vitamin D and sunscreen and skin cancer, but the vitamin B complex that can, help you resist sunburn. And so I Googled up what are the food sources of vitamin B complex, and there's a bunch of them, but berries look like my favorite. So if I'm going to be spending any time outside, I eat berries, and then I don't get burned. And I used to burn really easily, and now if I just plan ahead and eat my berries, I don't. I don't burn.
Really? So you're saying you started eating more berries? You mean like raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, and now maybe even strawberries? And now you just eating those berries keeps you from getting burned in the sun to some extent?
Yeah. When I first moved to Arizona, I would burn like in 5 to 10 minutes, because I have this white Irish skin. But when I started doing that, it's if I knew I was going to spend a few hours at the zoo or something outside in this Arizona glare, I would I'll fix a fruit smoothie, put a bunch of berries in it, and then I might get a mild if I'm out there for several hours, or I might get nothing, no sunburn at all.
Wow.
And so one time I was out there for several hours after eating berries, and I just got a very, very mild thing, and it was gone in a day. It wasn't this, like a burn I got when I was 19. It was just horrible, and I should have been hospitalized, but I toughed it out, So and I didn't know any better. I had, sunscreen was only just invented. The strongest they had in that day was number 8, and I had forgotten mine. A bar of friends that was number 4, and it was just a horrible experience. So had I known, of course, you didn't have year-round. You didn't have year-round produce like you do now, anyway. So I don't know if I could have gotten berries.
Yeah, the sunburn doesn't get me, but what really got me was when I was recovering from the cataract surgery. I had this one pair of wrap-on sunglasses, and that was still not enough. I put on another pair of sunglasses, and then I could tolerate being a passenger driving down the freeway in the Tucson afternoon, with all that glare. I needed 2 pairs of sunglasses to not, totally burn my eyes, So.
Yeah, we should find some of these vitamins to protect your eyes now. Maybe you need the carrots and carotene now.
Wow, that's
I know
a
you
great
can
idea.
buy 5-pound bags of carrots for cheap, not less cheap, rather affordably at the produce department. And I should break out the juicer again. Carrots are okay in a smoothie, but they're little gritty. Where if you juice them, you extract the juice, and maybe your mother's old way that might work better than. I just don't like cleaning juicers, which is why I prefer smoothies.
Well, I don't know if they have it up in Phoenix, but in Tucson they have this trucks on wheels or whatever they call it on Saturdays, where you could get up to 60 pounds of veggies and fruits for like $10. 60 pounds, maybe sometimes more.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they have carrots and all kinds of cruciferous vegetables.
Market on the Move.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Market on the Move, is that it? Yeah, Market on the Move.
That's one of them. Another one is Produce on Wheels is another one. There's a couple of competing organizations that stuff that's almost. Anyway, I'm getting the signal now that we're running out of time here. So I should say good night to everybody, and there's wonderful things out there, and don't ever lose hope, and don't ever give in to despair. Just always claim that for yourself. Yeah, just hope. Anyway, so good night, and thank you for listening, and see you next week.